Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ċEMMA's webinar. L-għodwa tajba lil kulħadd. Nilqakom għal dan il-webinar ta' ċEMMA li llum se jitratta il-pensjonijiet, il-sistema ta' pensjonijiet għal dawk illi twildu fl-1962 jew aktar il-qoddim. Magħna nixtieq infakkarkom illi dan il-webinar huwa irrekordjat u ikun available aktar tard fuq il-website ta' ċEMMA. Magħna illum għandna lil Fiona Kaptur, CEO ta' Junior Achievement Young Enterprise, Malta Foundation, Dr. Stephanie Fabri, economista u lecturer l-Università ta' Malta, Edward Butucic, li huwa direttur għal benefiċċji kontributorji fil-Dipartiment tal-Servizzi Soċjali, u David Spiteri Ginger, li huwa advisor fil-Ministeru tal-Ġustizzja Soċjali, Familja u Drittijiet għat-tfal u wkoll team leader ta' ċEMMA. Ħassoltu għandna magħna lil Ramon Muscat, direttur mal-EMCS li għamlu din ir-riċerka għal ċEMMA. Jiena Mario Kassar għal darb'oħra nilqakom u nistedinkom biex tibqgħu magħna sal-aħħar ta' dan il-webinar. Jekk intkom ikollkom xi mistoqsijiet qed jogħġobkom għamluhom użaw il-Q&A ta' dan il-webinar biex inkunu nirrispondukom jew live jew waqt il-webinar jew inkella jekk ma nlaħqux anki wara dan il-webinar. U dik l-introduzzjoni nibda biex nistieden lil David Spiteri Ginger jagħmel l-introduzzjoni għal dan is-suġġett kif ukoll jagħti forsi naqra ta' overview ta' kif is-sistema tal-pensjonijiet issa hija differenti għal dawk li twildu fis-62 fl-1962 u l-qudiem minn dik ta' dawk li twildu qabel. David?
Grazzi ħafna Mario, grazzi tal-min jattendi magħna il-webinar kemm fuq Zoom u kemm min forsi jaraħ live fuq Facebook. ċEMMA li qed nirrepreżenta llum hawnhekk ġiet mibnija biex ngħidlek fil-2017 wara li kienet saret strateġija propju biex teduka u tipprovdi informazzjoni fuq kif wieħed għandu jġib ruħu tal-affarijiet li għandhom x'jaqsmu mal-maniġġjar tal-flus u prioritajiet li għandhom x'jaqsmu ma' il-futur tiegħek bħal tippjana għal meta jinqala xi emerġenza bħal COVID pereżempju, jew inkella biex tippjana l-futur tiegħek. Huwa importanti li biex ix-xogħolna jasal sew nifhmu verament l-istat ta' knowledge li persuni għandhom hemm barra. U l-survey li għamilna llum li se nippreżentaw illum huwa proprju benchmark survey. L-idea hija biex naraw kemm understanding ta' kif taħdem is-sistema tal-pensjonijiet biex dawn is-snin li ġejjin inkunu nistgħu nibbenchmarkjaw lek l-informazzjoni, il-knowledge, l-inizjattivi li qegħdin nagħmlu qegħdin x'jagħmlu impatt jew lew. Dan huwa importanti ħafna se nispjega fejn. Il-period tal-irtirar dejjem jitwal, il-life expectancy dejjem titwal. Jekk irridu nkunu futuristi, dal-aħħar kien hemm artiklu dil-ġimgħa fuq it-Telegraph ta' Londra li l-estimations huma li n-nies sa jgħixu sa 150 sena. Ġifieri il-perjodu tal-irtirar dejjem qed jitwal. Issa hemmhekk id-domanda hija kull wieħed minna jrid jgħix dak il-perjodu l-iktar kwalità ta' ħajja possibbli. Aħna nafu li llum aħna dawn li twilidna mis-62 l-qoddim, il-retirement age tagħna hija 65 years. Il-life expectancy male qiegħda 80 years u life expectancy female qiegħda toqrob l-85 years. Mela miżerjament għandha tjorina li l-irġiel għandhom 15-il sena jgħixu f'perjodu tartarar u l-mara tgħix iżjed għandha kważi 20 sena. Mela dana it begs the question, jien il-kwalità ta' ħajja li rrid meta nirtira, x'sa tkun? L-income li jiena sa naqla mill-pensjoni kapaċi tini dik il-kwalità ta' ħajja li jien irrid ngħix? U jekk ma tinix dik il-kwalità ta' ħajja li jien irrid ngħix, x'miżuri rrid nagħmel biex jiena meta nasal biex nirtira verament nilħaq l-oġġettiv tiegħi. Sa l-ikbar domanda importanti hija biex inti tasal biex tagħmel din il-kalkulus trid tkun taf x'sattik is-sistema tal-pensjoni. Jekk int ma tafx sattik is-sistema tal-pensjoni, anything else minn hemm se jmur żmerġ. Se jmur żmerġ. U għal daqstant li wieħed mill-trusts biex ngħidlek punti ta' ġemma li huwa importanti ħafna hija li nwasslu kemm jista' jkun tarif b'mod effettiv u b'mod li jifhmu kulħadd ta' kif taħdem is-sistema tal-pensjoni. Għax bekk irridu, skużawni, għandi komment li qed tgħid li hija barranija, meta tistaqsi s-seminar wiex bil-Malti biss, għal daqstant għanaqleb għall-Ingliż. So as I was saying, it is imperative that we, people who are born in 1962 and over, are able to determine what level of income the pension system will provide me on retirement. There's one very important point. The way our pension system is designed, our pension system does not provide you a guarantee, does not provide you a level of income that you enjoyed whilst you were in employment. Our system is based on a ceiling. That is, when you pay your contribution, you do not pay your contribution either on your full income. So if you're earning beyond the contributory ceiling, which in our case is 25,258 euros, if you're earning anything beyond that, you're not paying a contribution, and you will not be receiving a proportionate income in your pension. So what this means is that overnight, literally overnight, on your birthday, as you reach 65 years, as a minimum, your pension will be 2/3 of the ceiling. So this is the most important calculus. This is the most important aspect. Now, obtaining the pension is dependent on other parameters. How many contributions do you have to pay? What happens if you don't pay those contributions? Can you make up for those contributions? So the understanding is not simple, and we are aware of that. And I will stop here. This survey, apart from the findings that it will give us, is also a benchmark against which we will carry further surveys, so that we understand that the instruments that ÇEMMA is doing to bring to the public an informed communication and education on the pension system is being effective, because as we will show in this webinar, it is very clear, as Ramon will show, that the majority of us have no idea how the pension system works, and that is worrying. So I will stop here, then I will continue my contribution further.
Thank you, David. And indeed, it has great relevance, because recent research published by Enrich, which is an American financial wellness platform that promotes financial wellness, found a direct link between people being able to retire when they're due to retire, and the level of financial capability that they have. In other words, the level of knowledge they have about finances and how also they manage their resources. So with that, I see, Ramon, that you have put up your presentation, and I would ask you to kindly take us through it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody. Let's start off with the methodology that we adopted. So basically it was a telephone survey, or the exact terminology is a CATI, computer-aided telephone interview, where we collated a total of 406 completed surveys. We made sure that the sample is representative of the Maltese population, both in terms of gender, age, and here we specifically focused on those aged between 18 and 59, and also as regards to regions, because Malta split up into 6 regions, so we made sure that the data is also in that respect equal to that of the population. And the data is representative with a margin of error of plus or minus 5% at a 95% confidence interval. We start off with the survey results. The first question we asked was on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 indicates that they're not knowledgeable at all, and at the other end, 5 indicates that they're very knowledgeable. How knowledgeable are you of your social security contribution that you pay? And here it's instantly, one clearly sees that overall the population is not really knowledgeable. We have 28% who feel they are knowledgeable, 42% who feel they are not, and then in between, you have those who have neutral views. When we analyzed the data by males and females, males feel they are slightly more knowledgeable, with 30% who feel they are knowledgeable, as opposed to 25% of the females. We then analyzed this by age as well, and we see that the younger generation, those aged 18 to 24, feel least knowledgeable with 16%. And also when analyzing by the highest level of education, those with tertiary level of education are most, or feel most knowledgeable, whilst those that have only completed primary level of education feel least knowledgeable, where you have 86% who feel that they are not knowledgeable about this. Those who gave an answer of 3, 4, and 5, we then ask them to see if they truly know what the percentage of post-social security contribution is. And then here we find out that out of these, only 32% were able to indicate the 10%. So 32% of this means that in actual fact, it's just under 20% of the whole sample that we had. Once again, males were slightly more aware than females. We then asked people, if you are employed, the contribution you pay is, and they had a number of answers to choose from. We read them out and then they gave us what they thought was the right answer. And 71% correctly indicated that it is on their gross wage. Once again, there's a marginal difference between males and females, with 73% of males indicating correctly, as opposed to 69% of females. When analyzing also by age, the older generation are more aware of how the employment contribution is paid, as opposed to the younger generations. We then ask what is the maximum income cap on which you pay your contribution. And here the correct answer is just over 25,000, and only 5% indicated this. However, if you see that people, 4% indicated 24%, which is quite close. If you take the two together, it is still very low, which means that under 10% are really aware what the maximum income cap is. Are you aware on what basis the maximum pensionable income increases annually? And here you have 89% that are not aware. And once again, the elder generation, those aged 45 and older, are slightly more aware than the younger generation. We then sought to see the maximum pensionable income increases annually on what formula, and no one was able to indicate what the formula is. We have 92% who indicated don't know, and the other 8% gave an incorrect answer. The number of contributions you pay in a year are, and the answer should be 52 weekly contributions, and in certain years 53, and 17% were able to indicate this. When you see that another 24% indicated 52 weekly contributions, so they are partially correct. So that means that 41% more or less have an idea of the number of contributions they have to pay in a year. Once again, when you analyze by age, younger generation are least aware. I think this comes out throughout the whole survey. To qualify for a pension, you must be in possession of 12 years of contribution. However, only 9% were able to indicate this. When you see that 56% indicated don't know, that means that the rest have incorrect information. So that is also something to be aware of. How many contributions do you need to pay to qualify for a full pension? Now here there is a variance whether you were born between 1962 and 1968 or in 1969 and over. However, if you take a look at the graphs, one realizes that irrespective of their year of birth, the general feeling is that it is 40 contributions. If you have paid 25 years of contributions, you will receive a pro rata pension, and 56% are aware of this. 37% have no idea, and the rest gave different answers. No variances were observed when analyzing this data by age or by gender. We then sought to see their awareness when it comes to if they have gaps in their contributory period. And once again, it is clear that people do not know any information about this. Whereas I think it's also interesting to see from the graph that we have 38% that are of the opinion that any time they can fill in the gaps that they have, and this is incorrect. At what age will you reach pension age? 49% are aware of the fact that it is 65 years of age. And then you have a number of different answers that were given. When we analyzed the data by gender, males are slightly more aware than females of what the age is, pension age is. We then analyzed by the different age segments, and you have those who are between 35 and 44 years of age. We have 60% that are aware of what their pension age is. To retire, one must be 61 years of age and have 40 years of contribution if they are born between 1962 and 1968. If they were born in 1969 or after, the number of years of contribution goes up to 41. However, in line with the previous data, people do not make any distinction, and in their mind, those that know something feel that it is 40 years of contributions. Nonetheless, the majority do not know. The elder generation are more aware than the other groups, where it is 1/3 as opposed to 1/4, more or less. If you choose to retire early, one cannot work until they have reached pension age. 11% of the sample is aware of this. 71% indicated straight away that they do not know, and so 18% have wrong information. If you decide not to opt for an early retirement option, your pension will be boosted by an increase of up to 23% on their pension income if they work till 65 years of age. 9% are aware of this once again, which is quite low. 78% outright had no idea, whereas the rest gave incorrect information. The pension is calculated, and this varies slightly once again on the year of birth, and that relates to the last 40 years or the last 41 years in the best 10 out of. And you have 19% of those aged between who were born between 1962 and 1968 who are aware of this. Once again, so the general feeling is that it is based on the last 40 years. They do not make any distinction of when they were actually born. Here we gave them a very tricky question to see their knowledge of awareness. And we asked them if we gave them a specific basic salary of just over 26,000 to see if they are aware of what their pension entitlement is. The correct answer would have been none of the above, because the maximum is just over 25,000 euros. However, if you see, the correct answer is 2/3 of the salary of the maximum of 25,000. No one got that, but you have at least 21% who know that it is 2/3 of something. The something is incorrect, but at least they are aware that there is this 2/3. In the final section, we focused on the contributory history, and here we realized that people have no idea. We started off with asking them, what is a credit to your contributory history? And only 2% gave the correct answer. We then gave them an example of if they or their spouse are entitled to a childcare credit up to the age of 6 as a maximum, and 10 in the case of severely disabled, what happens? And once again, only 8% gave the correct answer. The credits you, your spouse, are entitled for are, and the correct answer should have been 4 years for the first 3 children and for the fourth, and further children 2 years credit for each child, subject to working to cover the period taken off, and that is 2%, and only 2% were able to indicate this. Are you aware that you are entitled for credits if you successfully graduated in further and higher education? 12% only were aware of this. And when we analyzed this data by their level of education, those that had completed tertiary education were slightly more aware than the rest, where you had 20% that knew this. We then analyzed if your spouse passed away before his or her retirement, the contributory social security system will provide you with, and once again, the response is minimal of those that were aware of the correct answer. Then we gave a different scenario if they are over 61 years of age for the same question and eligible for a pension in your own right. And here again, only 1% know what happens. Where you have 62% that indicated outright that they don't know. The others gave an incorrect reply, and interesting is to see that 25% are of the opinion that they get a widow's pension. The final questions related to have you ever tried to work out how much income you will need in retirement, and only 8%. And maybe as expected, the youngest cohort were least likely to have calculated this. The final question of the survey asked on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 indicates that you are not confident at all, and 5 indicates that you are very confident. How confident are you that you will be financially secure in retirement? Overall, 23% feel confident. And then there are variances when we analyze the data by age group. And maybe it's interesting to see that those that are closer to retirement, the age of between 55 and 59, only 20% of them feel confident. I think that was the final slide, that we had.
Thank you, Ramon, for giving an overview of the findings of this survey. I think it is pretty evident that the level of awareness among the general public about the impact, the provisions and characteristics of the pension system is evident. The results were, at least for me, surprising by just how low this awareness is, and this is worrying. But starting off, my question to you is, why do you think there is such a lack of awareness? Is it because of the recency of the introduction of these amendments, or is it because people just don't care about the future? Edward, perhaps you'd like to.
Yes. Naħseb fl-opinjoni tiegħi it's a mix of diversi issues. Jista' jkun parti minna, yes, it changes, ongoing changes li jidħlu fis-sistema. Tista' tgħid on an annual basis.
Edward, do you mind if you speak in English? Because we have quite a
yes, I forgot, sorry.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, this could be attributed to several scenario issues. One of them could be the ongoing changes that are introduced on an annual basis through budget measures, which always tend to tweak or improve or do away with certain anomalies that are in the system, in pension system, and even in the whole social security system. So maybe that's one problem or issue. But then there are others, the other mainly from that they come up from the survey, that have been in place for years, for more 10, 20 years. And so you cannot just pinpoint it's because of the changes, because, okay, the changes may affect, but the fact that several other issues from the replies show that the majority do not know, when in fact they have been in the system for years. The two-thirds concept, for example, it's been there since 1975, since its introduction.
That was very, very, very interesting. That,
the 10%,
less than 50%.
What you pay as well. That's been with us for more than 20 years, if I'm not mistaken, because there were changes of the increase in the percentage, but it's been 10%, if I'm not mistaken, since 2000. So it could be a mix of, but mainly I think, again, it could be just simple lack of interest from the general public. And in fact, from the survey, if I remember correctly, one conclusion was that the older generation is a bit more knowledgeable about the system, and that could be because maybe when you're young, you don't even think about the future, let alone about when you're a pensioner. So automatically that could direct you to not showing any interest at all.
Yes, so, the unfortunate thing, of course, is that, yes, as we do get older, we start taking a bit more interest into what the pension is going to look like. But by then it's probably a bit too late to do anything about it.
Yes.
And this is the reality. David, were you surprised by the lack of awareness? You've been associated with pension reform, since we started talking about pension reform. What's your feeling about this?
When we were designing the initial pension reform between 2004 and 2006, in 2005, we commissioned the National Statistics Office to carry out a highly representative survey called Perceptions on the Pension System, which showed a number of the results showed that 70% of the population stated that they will have a similar quality of life in retirement as that they enjoyed whilst in employment. And for us who were involved in the reform, that sent a lot of warning signals. Because the pension system is not designed to give you the same quality of life, because it's not, you don't pay your contribution on your full income or your full wage, depending whether you're employed or self-employed, but it's based on a cap, and within that cap, then there is the two-thirds. So it was a concern. And in the recommendations, in the final recommendations that were presented, we strongly articulated that reform to pensions must not be solely architecturally designed and systematic. That is, the parameters that make up the system, which we have just gone through the survey: when do you retire, how much do you pay contributions, what is the ceiling, and all of that. But also, it must be behaviorally oriented. Whilst there was agreement in principle to do this, unfortunately, this never materialized, and education and communications on the pension system never really kicked off in a systematic manner, because the Department of Social Security, ongoingly for many years, as Edward can say, is on TV programs, on the radio weekly. Since we've been in the online world, there is information out there. But not a systematic, concerted effort that brings all the stakeholders together. In the 2010 strategic review, this followed the crash that had happened in 2008, and the World Bank and OECD, IMF, etc., were very clear that one of the reasons why people who had invested, who were either close to retirement or were retirees, and who had their pension plans wiped off, one of the reasons was behavior. Because research found that 80% of people are passive. So what happened is this cohort, this large cohort of people, they entered into investment plans in high equity when they were young, and they remained high equity when they were close to retirement or when in retirement. So when the market crashed and the equities crashed, their retirement was wiped off, and this resulted into a new science called behavioral heuristics in relation to financial capability, and also in designing of pension investments that take into account how people behave. So today you find what are called default funds. They are conservative, and they take you to a glide path, which basically means that you go into high equities while you're very young, but in your last 10 years, when you are reaching retirement, you move into safer investments. Literally, the last 5 years would be cash. Okay, so you're not earning interest, but you are safeguarding what you have accumulated over your period. So intending, the sooner you start, the younger you start, the larger is your investment. Once again, we had a chapter actually this time related to financial education. The government accepted our recommendations, and the Commission for Retirement Income and Financial Literacy was set up. Unfortunately, this was set up very late in the term of the of that particular administration in June 2012. It had not taken root, and when there was the change of administration, because it was still, really a fresh commission, it got lost. In the 2015 strategic review, Edward was also a member of this review. We once again stated government has a moral responsibility to be out there in a systematic manner, educating the population of how the pension system works, because the answer to that question requires information so that people can take rational, informed decisions to determine the quality of life they want to live. Without that information, wrong decisions are going to be taken, which may have a detrimental impact on the person's future over a long period, as I started off saying, you know, a male has a 15-year period expectancy in retirement. And we had recommended that a strategy is designed. The strategy was designed. I was asked to chair the team to design that. It was multi-party, and we issued it for consultation. One of the things that came out of the consultation. So the consultation document was very much focused on pension and knowledge. And when we went out for consultation, the feedback was, yes, guys, you're fine, but listen, it's not just about pension. And there are other, there is the life cycle of a person when primary, when he's young. And so you go into money management issues, and then you have vulnerable groups and all of that. And we went back to the drawing board and we reconfigured the pension, the strategy, and ÇEMMA came into being. So now ÇEMMA has been into play 4.5 years. If one goes to the ÇEMMA site, www.cemma.gov.mt, you will today find a substantial amount of a corpus of resources, calculators, including a retirement planner, videos, including a 19 video session, 19 videos on how the pension system works, all of that. But it is evident, and this is where we have to go back to the drawing board now. It is evident that from the results that we have seen through this survey, that we're not doing enough, and we may not necessarily doing it the right way. So this intelligence is extremely important to ÇEMMA, because we have to make sure that the efforts that we undertake are actually reaching out. Without further ado, yes, there is the issue of behavioral heuristics. Okay, and people, we assume there is Stephanie here, who's the economist. Economic theory assumes that people are rational. In truth, people are not rational. And we were all kids in our time. You know, when you're a kid, the last thing you have on your mind is retirement. When you are in married life, you are probably undergoing the two major investments that you can ever do, either buying the house and paying off the mortgage, or renting, and having kids. Okay, now these are the two major investments that you can do. So if people have not already been preconditioned to think about retirement, it's very difficult to get people to think about retirement when they are dealing with the day-to-day for a very long time. And once you get close, it may be for many people not necessarily the right time, because then your period to accumulate savings for retirement is short, is significantly short. I'll stop here for the moment.
Stephanie, if I may draw you into the conversation at this point. David is mentioning behavioral heuristics. I mean, from your perspective, how would this lack of awareness affect not just the individual in the future? You know, that's pretty evident, but from a national perspective in terms of the economy, is there a cost to the economy for this lack of information?
Yes, thank you, Mario. So good morning, everyone, first of all. David mentioned an important point. David mentioned the fact that in economic theory, we assume that people are rational, but in reality, people are not rational. And first of all, I wanted to start by saying well done for coming up with a project like this, because these kind of projects help in making people, let's say, more rational. Here we are discussing financial education. Financial education is important because it gives people the skills and the confidence to make more rational choices, more informed choices. It helps people to understand where to go in terms of financial assistance and how to manage their financial well-being. An important point that I wanted to mention as well is for whom is this kind of financial education important? I'll come to the economic impact, Mario, but it's very important. So for whom this financial education is important? It is important for everyone, but in a recent OECD study and in many even studies, in academic studies, authors found a strong correlation between the level of education and the level of income and their financial understanding. So the target audience should be, yes, everyone, but there should be a specific target audience in terms of these cohorts to help them more manage their financial, let's say, portfolio. In fact, studies showed that financially savvy people are more likely to invest in stocks, accumulate more wealth, and the higher the level of education, again, they are more likely to accumulate more wealth, they are more likely to manage their credit cards better, and long-term financial well-being. Now, in terms of the economic impact on the, let's say, macro level is not as sudden as we might think. So the first impact is on the individual. It is the social impact. It is on the well-being of the individual in terms of poverty and indebtedness. And that ultimately, of course, in accumulation will lead to the impact on the economy at large. Recently, even the finance minister has mentioned a lot the issue of well-being in general and economic development. And these are the kind of projects, this kind of financial education, etc., the projects that are likely to lead to well-being in general. So yes, the impact first, of course, is on the individual, on his personal well-being, but if people are not able to sort of save in the long term for their pension or manage their life after work, let's say that, their financial life after work, then that is likely to lead to higher levels of poverty, lower levels of well-being in the economy, and higher levels of indebtedness, and of course then higher levels of government intervention to help these people. There is, of course, an opportunity cost to all of this for the individual. When you come to your pensionable age, the opportunity cost is your foregone expenditure. So your quality of life, let's say lower quality of life and foregone expenditure. So I think that, yes, we should worry on the impact on the economy in the medium to long term, but I worry much more on the impact on the individual per se, and the quality of life and well-being of the individual. At a new level, we've been talking a lot on well-being, even post-COVID recovery, let's focus on well-being, let's focus on well-being, but it is rare that you hear, let's focus on educating people in terms of their financial well-being. Having economic growth is good, but that does not mean that there will be sort of financial soundness for the individual in the long term. You need to help individuals to help them manage sort of their income or higher income better.
Yeah, you know, the saying is catch them young in terms of trying to instill habits in people. I remember when I was young, quite a few moons ago, they used to come around and you know, open up savings accounts for us, and we'd put in you know, a sixpence in those days and so on. And it basically got you thinking about savings even at that young age. And you know, Fiona here works a lot with young people. The Junior Achievement Young Enterprise, I would say, deals with motivated young people who want, you know, to get involved in doing something that is, you know, that has value, so to speak. What do you think drives young people to take on a different habit working with them, Fiona?
I think in the first instance, I think in our generation, we were taught to budget when we were kids. I had little glass jars and I would split up my pocket money and I would put whatever was appropriate in the respective jar. I don't see this happening with kids today. Mom, I want this. Dad, I want that. Oh, and it comes out of the wall as well. Now, we don't even associate the fact that there is a bank behind it and that there's a process and a procedure. And one of the things that really upsets me is that something like credit worthiness is not even taught or promoted in schools whatsoever. So to tie in very much with Stephanie's point, they do not have a concept that if they don't pay that mobile phone bill, it's leaving a mark on their reputation. They don't associate that all these bad moves and bad decisions create a credit picture behind them that will then potentially stop them, block them from the financial wellness that Stephanie is referring to, where you can't take a loan from the bank to buy a house when you come to need it. And so these are the things that we really try to intervene at a very young age. Now, young enterprise is notoriously associated with entrepreneurship and starting business. But the reality is that the three pillars of J are entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and employability. And so these things really come into play. And yes, get them young. I mean, we are known again for our flagship programs, which tend to run in sixth form and tertiary, but we also have primary and secondary school programs. And one that I love delivering is one in primary school, where we actually introduce the concept of taxation, where they actually get to learn why we pay taxes and what that contributes to. Who pays for the mayor? Who pays for police? Who pays for the roads? Who pays for health? And these are the concepts that, unfortunately, in the school books, they will not find. So this financial wellness, we're expecting it to appear out of nowhere, when, quite frankly, we're not tackling it within our education system. And if it is, it's not related to their everyday life. And so, yes, there is a gap in the results that we've seen Ramon telling us about, where the younger generation are clearly weaker in their decisions than the older ones. But that's up to us to change, and parenting needs to change it too, because there is a direct relation between what the school delivers and what the parents do at home. And so here I think that we have a moral obligation, as David puts it, to really work a little bit harder in terms of instilling this sense of civic responsibility, because financial wellness, if you do then translate it into the macro environment, is civic responsibility. And that's what we try to do. We try to get them young, because there is also a habit formation there, where parents tend to live a little bit on the line and perhaps in a state of debt. It does tend to get picked up by the generations thereafter, and it becomes a family habit. And these are the things that we really need to work hard to break. And so we need to start instilling those good habits in the young ones as early on as possible. So there's a lot of work to do.
You know, you mentioned it becomes a family habit, and I think there's also a case for educating the parents in all this, or perhaps the children educating the parents in terms of these concepts. And you know, these are strategies that might have worked also in other areas. Looking at these issues, Edward, do you see any difference in people coming to you from those born before 62 and those born in 62? Do you see the kind of issues that they bring up as being different?
Basically, from a pension perspective, they're very similar, the issues. So those born before December 61 and those born afterwards, yes, basically what they want to know, what they ask, they're very similar. The answer is a bit different that we give them, obviously, because the conditions are different. But otherwise, yes, they're concerned with mainly what pension they will get, how much, whether their record of contributions is up to date, whether they have the minimum to qualify.
Would it be fair to assume that these would be coming from older people rather than the younger ones?
No, it's quite across the board, you can say. More, yes, there's more requests from those who are close to pension age, like the last 5 years. But we do get a lot of queries from younger, like they're in their 40s. Mainly, that's where it starts, sort of, between 40 and 50. but the closer you get to pension age, the more, the higher the demand for knowledge.
A recent study, and I think I mentioned this earlier in passing, concerning the workforce in the States, found, for example, that there will be in a few years' time some 10% of the American population working beyond the age of 75, and that nearly 60% of those coming to retirement age, they were planning to continue working past retirement just because they won't be able to maintain their quality of life. Do we have any feel of what the comparative level of people working beyond retirement is in Malta at this time?
From data that we get on a regular basis or on demand, there was an increase, yes, over the last 5 to 10 years of persons who continue in employment after their pension age, and especially since 2016 with the introduction of the percentage deferral increase, whereby if you continue in employment and do not claim a pension before your pension age, your eventual rate will increase by up to 23%. That has improved the issue of active aging when it comes to this particular issue. And if I recall correctly, from the number of pensioners, retirement pensioners, who are receiving a pension and do not receive the full statutory bonuses from the department or part of, that shows us that approximately close to 4,000 or a bit more are, while in receipt of a pension, are still in employment. So there is, it's a bit static, but there was an improvement since 2016, obviously because of this incentive, and even more, yes, from 2019 there was another surge, because it was opened even for public employees in 2019, the percentage increase. So
I think, when we have full employment and people want to continue working after they retire because they feel they can contribute and they, it's part of their active aging, that is one thing, and that is, I would think, Stephanie, you'll agree with me, a benefit for the economy. It's only when the economy is sluggish and when you have to work to be able to maintain a living that it becomes a problem. And this again, I think, ties into some research we had done previously. Ramon may correct me if my recollection is wrong, but I believe that we found that only 1 in 4 people have some sort of additional pension plan. Again,
slightly lower actually. So it was around 21. It was around 21 or 22%.
21. So it's about 1 in 5 actually. And in the States, they found it worrying that 1 in 4 did not partake in their equivalent, alternative pensions, their 401k. So here we have 1 in 4 who have an addition. There they have 1 in 4 who hasn't. Why is this? We've had the voluntary occupational pension scheme legislation in place now for quite a few years. Is what is provided not attractive enough? Are people not marketing it aggressively enough? Do people even know about it?
Well, my personal opinion take on this is probably the first thing was that yes, we spent a lot of time talking and mentioning these, but years passed, and eventually when they were introduced, I think it was not late in the day, but for certain cohorts like me and David, for example, and David mentions this quite a lot. It was too late for us. The introduction of the VOPs and yes, it could be that yes, I don't think there's enough. They're not attractive enough. In fact, from their introduction, I think it was in 2015 up to now, there was a slight amendment in the incentive, and the uptake spiked a bit. So that is probably one of the issues that lead to this low uptake. Basically, yes, maybe they're not, again, not well promoted. So
please go ahead, sir.
Sorry, Edward. Sorry. You wanted to continue? You're on mute, Edward.
I was going to like stop.
No. Continue, please.
Yeah, probably yes. And again, the lack of interest, maybe the lack of awareness comes in again. I think that's an issue that is all the time present in this topic, because if you're not interested, you're not aware because you're not interested, then the probability that you will invest in a private plan is more remote. So it's a mix of, it's like a chain. One thing leads to the other.
Yeah. Stephanie, you wanted to pass a comment?
No, I think that basically a small comment, a very, very brief comment. Pension plans and alternative pension schemes need to be more innovative, because as time goes by, people are increasingly living in this consumerist society, whereby we're increasingly living in this society where you have everything around you, and it's easy to fall in the trap of not saving and buying. And apart from that, I think that the burden even on young families, David mentioned having kids, buying a house, is constantly increasing. So with the increasing house prices and even increased living expenses, education, private schooling, who invest in private schooling. So these elements bring sort of the bill up and reduce your marginal propensity to save, let's say, or your ability to save. So these are elements that need to be taken into consideration. And the alternative pension schemes have to be more attractive in order to help people sort of to save.
Thank you,
the
Stephanie.
number of families is increasing, of course, so that makes it more difficult to save.
Well, you mentioned the marginal propensity to save. Of course, that also depends on your discretionary income. So one has to look at it. We really have to look at this holistically, even from a national perspective, in terms of economic strategy, the type of value added that we can push through our economy that can then be reflected in an increase in discretionary income, and hence an increase in the ability to save. And I think it was also, very much tied into how we need to educate ourselves and young people, because we keep talking about young people, but in reality, I think we are the guilty parties here in terms of consumerism. And I think, there is a glimmer of hope, because the idea of sustainability among young people is gaining ground. I don't know if Fiona would support me in that from her youth perspective, but David has had his hand up for a while, so I'll bring him into the discussion. David?
From data that is provided by the Inland Revenue Department, base year tax base year 2019 on member enrollment in private pensions. As at 2019, there were something like 7,500 in personal pensions, and the majority of these people were in the 30 to the 39 cohort. The cohort between 18, excuse me, I'm on the fly path here. The cohort between 18 and 29 was insignificant. Okay, so that shows that the private pension scheme is not capturing the imagination of the young generation. Again, there are behavioral reasons for that: myopia, inertia, and all of that. Then you have, as Edward mentioned, the cohort, people of my age. I chaired the reforms in pension between 2004 and 2012. I recommended in 2004 the introduction of private pensions. I was 38, and they were only introduced in 2015 when I was in my 50s. So for a particular cohort of people, the presence of private pensions are not an option, because you don't have the time to accumulate a fund that gives you a respectable retirement nest fund. Now, that does not mean people like myself did not take other options, but we are living in a world where of zero interest rates. So, you know, one of the disadvantages that people such as myself who are involved in financial education that we face is when we, you know, try to propel people to think of their future, the counter question is, save in what? Now we talk about people being financially capable and their investor worth. The first empirical data that Malta has, okay, is the INFE OECD survey, which we carried out in 2018. Now, the data there is very, and this is empirical data. Now I'm talking empirical data, not anecdotal conclusions. 84% of the Maltese population want to save in banks. Okay, they are not, and that tends to show that they are risk averse. Okay, and we have a very young stock exchange. We don't have a culture for stock exchange, for investments in equities, etc. If you triangulate our survey with the central bank survey vis-a-vis household wealth, you will find that the average person, his or her household wealth, 80% is their house. And the other 20%, the overwhelming majority, is bank deposits. So now, so here we have a major issue. We see again, the data tends to show that younger generations, and when I mean younger generations, I'm meaning very young generations from 18 to 25, are more savvy in terms of new investment instruments like Bitcoin and digital currency. Okay, now that brings its own concerns. We've seen what's been happening with Bitcoin these past 2 weeks. They are more savvy in the use of e-trading mechanisms because they're more digitally DNA. Potentially, they are less cautious than their previous generations. Generations like mine, and I'm one of them, I lost significant money in the dot-com crash, which whilst I was adventurous at that point in time in terms of generating my wealth, ever since I've been very cautious. So, you know, so it's a conundrum. It's not a one policy measure, it's a multiple policy measures. We need somehow to see how we break this interest deflationary impact on savings, which is having, has run amok pensioners, not just in Malta, but you see the debates going on in Europe, and in Europe particularly because America has increased its interest rates, UK has increased its interest rates, so you have the stagnation in the Eurozone. So it's not easy. Now, one other point, and I will stop, is private pensions are voluntary. Okay, and I emphasize the word voluntary. Now you incentivize people in this case positively through fiscal incentives. Now, besides going into the argument of what is the right attractive fiscal incentive, because it comes to a point where you may not be creating what we call new savings. That is, I'm putting away 1,000 euros, which I otherwise would have spent, as against substitute savings, where I have 1,000 euros in the bank and I'm getting no interest, and I put them in a private pension because I get a 25% tax credit. Okay, and the issue then that becomes tax avoidance. Okay, so that is a different science in itself. But research is very clear: voluntary pensions, fiscally voluntary pensions, plateau. You know, you're not going to get a 60% population, which is what we want more than a 60%. We want 80% at least population doing alternative savings for their retirement. You're not going to get that through voluntary. I mean, study any country in the world, and the most you can get is 30%. Infatti, the UK, which had the highest rate of occupational retirement pensions, because their system is very much workplace based, okay, their national insurance pension is very basic. In the reforms carried out under the Turner Commission in the 2000s, they were seeing that people investing in workplace pensions, occupational pensions, falling from around 70% to below 50%. And they took the decision in 2008. They have implemented that decision nationally by 2017 to introduce automatic enrollment. And automatic enrollment is not a mandatory second pension as we understand it. Okay, it's a very clever system. It was designed by the Kiwis. A very clever system which plays on your behavior heuristics. What automatic enrollment does is it understands that when you come to make long-term decisions, the main inhibitor is inertia. So you may understand that you need a pension, but you may not act on that understanding because it's far away. So if if I plan to go and do something and do a private pension plan and something crops up, I have to defer it to have enough time. Truth is, most people don't actually act. So what automatic enrollment does, it changes inertia upside down. It enrolls you on your first job, on the change in job, on whatever, but you can get out. Now, because the inertia of taking that action of getting out is too much for people, the UK experience shows that 9 out of 10 remain. The Kiwi experience shows, and the Kiwis have been in this since '96, so they have a longer track record, and you have the 401k in the US, that 8 out of 10 remain. All right, so there are ways and means, and there are intelligent ways, all right, because a mandatory second pension can be very controversial. You have the unions, the employers, to introduce, to counter the heuristics that prevent people from doing what they should do to ensure a higher quality of life in retirement. But that takes us back a full circle. What is your quality of life in retirement? And to determine that, you need to know what your income in retirement is going to be. And to determine that, you need to know how your pension system works and what retirement income level it's going to give you, so that you can take intelligent decisions that allow you to bridge that gap.
Thank you, David, for that. We're coming to the end of this webinar. And, it's pretty evident that we need to increase awareness. We need to increase the financial capability, financial wellness of the population. It is an effort that needs to be all-encompassing, looked at from a holistic perspective. What would be the main drivers? What are your thoughts on that? What can help achieve this for us?
If I can comment, yes, I think I have to be honest. I mean, obviously, from my perspective, we're focusing very much on the kids and starting their careers. I mean, I have to be fair, within the framework of J, pensions doesn't feature anywhere. But I have to say that I feel very enlightened by it, and I will certainly take it on board to see what I can do to contribute in that respect, because we're in front of the kids, we're there, so we have an opportunity to make a change and to make a difference. And so I will definitely find some way of, I mean, towards the end of our programs, we always sort of give them a workshop on, for instance, where are you going next? What is your future taking you? Where are you planning to be? And we can definitely even incorporate this in that sense, in terms of, don't just think of the now, but think of the later. And we start building the awareness from here on. So personally speaking, I see a lot that I can personally contribute to make my little difference in the little bit that we do. So I think if everybody had to take that sort of approach, I'm sure we could change and increase the level of awareness quite significantly, because when you associate your quality of life with the issue, I think that makes people sit up and listen. I think if you tell them, do you realize that when you are at your weakest in life, when your health may be failing you, you will not be able to live in a comfortable way, in spite of having worked for 40 or 50 years of your life, I think that's quite a dramatic thing to say. So I think we do need to give a bit of shock treatment to make them understand what the significance of the consequences really are. And hopefully that will help us drive it home.
What you're saying, Fiona, kind of reminds me of a concept we have in coaching called immunity to change. People who are motivated to change, but somehow they never made a change. And it's usually because of underlying factors that you would not identify by simply, looking at the surface, but you need to dig deep down and look at the motivations. Edward, how can the department harness, so to speak, its resources to further, create this awareness, improve this awareness?
The department currently, and this has been for quite some years now, has always had this informal program of outreach. We're on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. We're on TV, on radio. So that has improved a lot. The frequency has improved a lot, and it's like we speak about different subjects, different benefits. Pensions is one of them, obviously. Then when it's like, if it's a program, from my experience, for example, a general program, the public always veers you towards pension, even if the program is promoted as that this particular benefit will be speaking. Eventually, with the phone-ins, it ends up on pensions. So there is thirst for knowledge, and obviously we can improve what we're doing. Yes, we're always improving in terms of what we give to the public, both in terms of provision of knowledge. We have we have a website dedicated to benefit provision, eligibility rates, you name it. Calculator, there's even a calculator. There's for pensions and for several other benefits. There's the generic email that is available to the public, so public can even access nowadays their personal records from the website, just through provision of their ID number and the ID link, which is quite simplified now. Yes, and obviously we have to continue doing this. And again, with ÇEMMA, it's like in parallel with our website, it then provides mainly on pensions and other life skills, as mentioned. In another ways, the department, obviously, fostering of financial well-being is on an annual basis. This is carried out, as I mentioned, through the amendment, increase in rates according to cost of living from year to year awarded by government. And again, always trying to improve eligibility and remove anomalies. So that also provides that. That's like the entry. Then you have to, yes, we need to continue to improve our provision, our provision of knowledge to the people.
Anthony, are there economic arguments that one can make with employers, for example, to be more proactive in promoting the financial capability of their employees? Not necessarily in terms of, promoting pension schemes and the like, but in the general financial well-being of their employees.
I think, first of all, there is a financial interest for employers in the sense that we are going onto an aging population. So as we go along, the population will be older, the Maltese population will be older, and having financial well-being as we get older means that we can live a better quality of life, and the economy can sort of proceed in a way and grow in a way that is more sustainable. So they have a vested interest in ensuring that there is long-term financial well-being in terms of employers. Of course, as well, they have a vested interest in seeing national well-being. I think that through projects I speak to employers a lot, and they do care about the social aspect as well of the economy. So making them aware on the importance of having long-term financial sustainability for employees, I think is one of the keys to success. I think this sort of problem that we have, we can solve it mainly through education, educating not just the employees, but also the employers on its importance.
Thank you, Stephanie. David, sorry, Fiona, you wanted to say something? No, okay. Final comment, David. GEMMA, GEMMA has been now around for a few years. It is increasing in terms of people's awareness of GEMMA, as we've also seen from a number of recent surveys. There are about 17,000 followers on Facebook, for example. Today's seminar was filled to capacity, and we're also streaming on Facebook because of that. But is there a missing ingredient that GEMMA needs to kind of bring about, to help bring about this holistic approach to increasing awareness?
Well, that's a tough question. It's building education capability through non-behavioral heuristics, behavioral triggering nudges. Okay, is more long term. It's a long term process. If you design a system like automatic enrollment, right, as I explained earlier, and introduce it, the impact is immediate. But doing it through education, the impact is much more long term, and so is doing it through fiscal incentives. Now, the strategy to be successful has to be multi-pronged, working with strategic partners who have the trust of their members, and we have multiple now. We are partners with the General Workers Union, we're partners with the UHM, we've just partnered with the Local Councils Association, and a host of others, and that opens education through reaching out through the members, education once COVID is removed from the equation, where you can hold education in village halls and Gazini tal-Banda and doing street theater and all sorts of things. So this is it has to be multi-pronged, it has to be sustained, it has to be simple, and it has to make use of extensive interactive media, whether that is videos or whether that is using gamification to start educating kids from primary level on education, on money management, including the future. And here I am very proud to say that ÇEMMA will, in the coming days, weeks, launch Malta's first financial gamification game called Money Monsters. This was a partnership that we have done with the University of Malta, Department of Artificial Intelligence, again, that has been done by students. It has also been identified as one of best practice examples that's going to be presented at next week's EUFIN conference. Of course, you know, one game will not change the world, but how do you say? It sets together with other activities that ÇEMMA is doing a multi-pronged effect. So there's no one thing. And the last thing, and I'll stop with this, is we do not look at the population as a monolith. Okay, we look at the population in various segments. Self-employed like myself, all right, my issues with pensions are completely different than a person who's employed. So it's futile for ÇEMMA to go to pensions doing the rhetoric that it uses with employed persons, because similarly with other groups, including vulnerable groups. It may sound paradoxical, but it is a fact that the worst thing you can do with low-income groups is force them to save for their pension. And there are two main reasons for that. One, under our system, that group gets the full 2/3, okay, because they are the income is below the maximum pensionable income, and hence the 67% social contract that the 2/3 system is supposed to provide actually gives it to them. And the second, when you're talking about low-income groups, their issues are really not the future, but the day-to-day. A lot of these live check to check. Jobs are temporary in this, not short, but they can change because automation and all that stuff. So education must be multi-pronged and must be tailored. It's not a single message for all. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And with that, I would like to thank the panel. Stephanie Fabry, who I must admit I'm, really admiring your newborn and how calm the baby is. Congratulations on becoming
He's
a mom.
only calm in my arms, however. That's why he's, yeah. When I put him in his bed, he's...
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Edward, Fiona, Ramon, and of course, David. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this webinar and invite you to keep a watch out for our next webinar at the end of June. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.